Welcome everybody, it's Debbie O'Neill of Scrap Me Quick Designs. I'm so happy to have you here with me. If you're new to my channel, be sure and subscribe so you don't miss any future tutorials. In today's tutorial, we're going to be making the Diamond Press Gingerbread House. It's a 3D house. It is 5.5 inches long. It's 3.5 inches wide, and it's about 5 inches tall. It makes an adorable display, or you can use it to give treats. Now, I will be sharing with you today all my favorite tools and tips for working with this, as well as what kind of white ink shows up best, and a few other things that I think will help you as you put this together. And it is so adorable. You're going to love customizing it. This would even be a project if you cut everything out that the kids could help put together. So you will need Diamond Press. This is the Gingerbread House, and you do get instructions, of course, from Diamond Press, which are excellent. So it tells you how many of each piece you need to cut out. We're going to cut out one together, and then I've already cut the other pieces. But you also get all of these amazing embellishments, so you can really customize your house to look the way you want. Now I do have my pieces cut out, and I'm going to show you how I put mine together. But you feel free to do you. If you want a different shaped window, you can do that. If you want a different embellishment, you can do that. So it comes with all of those things, and there's instructions here that even tell you exactly how to put it together, but in today's tutorial we're going to do that as well together so that you don't miss any steps, or if you have any questions, let me know. Now your set is a Grand Marquis set, and how you can tell that is it says Grand Marquis on the background of your die sets. That means that you need to have a die cut machine that will fit the largest of the dies. So this die is the largest piece, which creates the house, and it is about 6 1/4 inches across, and it is 9 1/2 inches long. Okay, so any die cut machine that you can use that would have a platform big enough for you to do that you can use it. Now, of course, I'll be using the Diamond Press Grand Marquis that came out a few months ago, and it is a larger machine, and it has a wider here so that this die will fit in there. So if it says Grand Marquis on any of the Diamond Press dies, that means you need to have a machine, either the Grand Marquis, or you need to have a larger machine. So we're going to take this first one off here, which is the house. I'm going to set the rest of this off to the side. And of course you have your stamp set as well to do your embellishing. And you have lots of fun dies on your sheet. But we're going to start by taking the Grand Marquis has a larger folder that you'll need to have to be able to fit the larger die. Now, if you've never done this before, I do want to tell you there's a couple of things that help you along the way. So I've opened up my folder and I'm laying my piece. I'm making mine out of heavy-duty craft cardstock. You can cut it out of any kind of cardstock you want, but I'm using a craft cardstock. And your dies have a flat side, and then they have a side that's raised. The raised side is the cutting side, and that's what goes down on your paper. Okay, so you're going to want to line that up, and then this will slide around on you. So I recommend you use some type of washi tape. This is a low-tack tape. I find that I use the most, and it's a paper washi tape basically. In fact, all the supplies that I'm using in the tutorial today are listed in the description of the video, so if you see something and you're interested in it, check it out there. I've got everything linked up. If you make any purchases from any of my links, I earn a small commission with no additional charge to you, and I thank you for doing that. All right, so I used just 2 pieces. so big. I'm trying to show you. I use just a little piece here and a little piece here to hold this in place on top of my cardstock. And that helps the die from sliding around when we go to run it through the machine. Now, the Grand Marquis is a hand crank machine. It works beautifully. I'm just going to lay this in here and roll this through. Now, this is a very long die, so it does take a second to get it all the way through, but you're only going to need to do this one time through. You don't have to run it through a couple of times or anything like that. The reason why I love the Grand Marquis and the Marquis machines is because I only have to have one folder. If I was using a different type of cutting machine, I would have to figure out what the stack looks like with the different platforms that I'd have to have, and I just don't have time for that. So I really like that I can just have one folder. I put this in and ta-da, we're done. And it cuts out cleanly. Perfect. All right. So we've done that. I'm going to set this back off with our dies here. Just lay it back up here. I think it goes this way. And so I'm going to get that over there. Now, on your instruction sheets, it tells you to do something. It tells you that you need to take the door if you want to cut the door out of your box. So here's the door that goes on one of the front side of your box. And you can cut this out, and it's going to leave it attached to the box on one side of the door, and then the other side of the door will open up. I'm going to show you how to do that. It shows you in the instructions. I have opted not to cut mine out because that in my sample, that little door is so small, I couldn't even get anything inside of it. So I didn't see a point of having to put the door on. But I wanted to show you, if you want the door on, how would you do that? So on your die sheet, you need to find the door, which just is this shape. Okay, there's the door. And you're going to put it, it says to put it kind of centered in the middle. So this is one, you're going to make two of these and then the base, okay? So on one of these, you're going to put your door, and it says to put it, you'll kind of center it. Now there's fold lines here, so take note of that, and there's a fold line here, so you'll kind of center that, and it says to put it a quarter of an inch above the bottom of your thing. So I'm going to do that again, and then you're going to put your washi tape on there. And we're going to put it back in to our folder and go ahead and run it through the machine real quick. All right. Since it was just on that one end, I rolled it through. Okay, so now we're going to set this off to the side. We're not going to need that. All right, we're going to lift the tape off and the die. And now your door is attached here, but it opens up here. Okay, so if you want the door to open up, you'll use the die. If not, we're just going to stamp on the one that I'm going to make. But that's what it looks like if you want to have the door open. It's kind of tiny to get much in there, or for people to pull things out of the box if you close it the way that Diamond Press has you close it. I have an alternative idea of how I kind of created something so I could open and close the box easier, and I will show you at the end of the video. Okay, but so if you want the door, that's how you would put the door on. If you don't want the door, then don't do this part. All right, so in the instructions, it clearly tells you that you need to cut out. You'll have two pieces that are the same, which are the two house shapes, and then you have the base shape. Okay, on all of these, the great thing about the dies is it doesn't just cut out the outside, but it gives you the crease lines or the folding lines. So we're going to fold these while we have it, and it's pretty easy to do that, we're going to just fold those over. Now, depending upon your cardstock, I'm working with kind of a thicker cardstock. I do recommend that you use like a scraper tool or a bone folder or even an old credit card or something. And I like to make sure my lines are crisp. So I'm going to fold it over and I'm going to score. Now that I've folded it myself, I'm going to score it with this is a scraper tool. So it gives me nice crisp lines. If I don't do that, they're not quite as sharp, and it makes a difference when we go to put this together to make sure that everything is going to line up appropriately. So take a second and do that. I'm going to do that on all of these pieces. So you have the bottom piece. So I've got the two house pieces folded and scored, and then we're going to do the box piece, and it goes like this. And of course we'll go ahead and score this one as well so that it is nice and crisp edges. So this is going to create the base of our gingerbread box. All right, we're not going to use that right this second. We're going to set it off to the side. Now, you have a choice of how you're going to adhere these pieces together. So you can use a liquid glue. You can use like the Bearly Art Precision Glue, or my favorite is the Art Glitter Glue. It's a little bit thicker. The Bearly Arts glue is slightly thinner, I guess you would say, and I just prefer this. But the main thing is you want something with a fine tip on it. That's going to help you as we adhere some of these pieces, and so you can use a liquid glue. These are quick dry glues, or you can use a score tape. Okay, this is a double-sided adhesive tape that you peel off, and it's got adhesive on both sides with a liner that you peel off. So you're going to see me use both of these just so you guys can see how it works. And I also recommend that you have a pair of craft tweezers handy as we go to work with some of the smaller pieces. You'll really appreciate having this. All right, so let's get this together. So you have the two pieces of the house, and what we're going to do is we're going to glue on the tab. We're going to add our adhesive here on the tab, and we're going to line this up to glue these two together. Now when you do that, before you start putting it together, make sure you've lined up your crease line that's up here, and you've lined your bottom up. Okay, that's going to give you the best box shape. Now I'm going to use, for this side, I'll go ahead and use the score tape. And the great thing about this is I don't even have to have my scissors out. You can just tear it easily. Do that. And then I usually rub it down, and then you just peel the liner up. Okay, so that's the plastic wax liner. You can take that off, and then I'm going to line this up. And make sure you line it up so that the bottom and where the crease is up here, the fold line, matches up. If you don't get this up in the bottom straight, that's when your box is going to get wonky and you're not going to be able to attach it very easily. Now, Diamond Press does recommend that we go ahead and we decorate our box first once we get to this point before we fold it and put it together. So we're going to do that. I am using the Diamond Press stackable trays for me to keep everything organized and all my pieces together. And so I've got tools in one, and I have my different die cut shapes cut out already, and I keep them in the trays to make it easier for me to have it organized to put this together. What you're going to need to know is that there's different options. You can cut things out of cardstock. You can cut it out of glitter cardstock. The dies work great for that. So you would do it just like I showed you the process of cutting these shape out. You would figure out of all the dies, which of the things do you want to have on your house. So you can refer back to this sheet in your instructions, and it shows you all the different things that you have available to decorate your house with. All right. And I have cut out some things, and we're going to do some stamping together. I've already got the things die cut. You can either die cut out of cardstock, which is what I've done here. I have white cardstock that we're going to use some of the stamps to stamp the image onto the die cuts. The peppermint in the candy canes in particular. There's a couple of ways I'm going to show you here in a minute how you could color, like if you don't have colored cardstock. This is a great way to use up your scraps. If you have scrap paper, it's perfect for that, or even scraps of white cardstock. So I'm going to show you guys a couple of options to how to do that. And then in the other box, I have the windows that I cut out for my house, and then the shutters and the sash, and I use glitter cardstock to make the roof line, and also the side for the front of the house on the sides. I use that. So here's your house, and everybody has been asking, how do you add the white to this? It's not a die cut. This part here where the lines are, that is not a die cut that you get. This is a stamp that you get, and scallop basically. Okay, so this you're going to need to have a long acrylic block to be able to use it. So this one, the one I have, is about 1 inch wide, and it is about 6.5 inches long, and it actually needs to be a little bit longer than that. So a 7 by 1 or 2 by 7 acrylic block you're going to need to have for this if you want this to turn out perfect when you go to ink it. You'll also need other acrylic blocks if you're going to do some of the other embellishments that we're going to use. So we will be using a couple of different sizes acrylic blocks. So I've got a small one that I'm going to put some of the small pieces on, and then I have this one which is about 2 by 3 that gives me good control, and this is going to be used for when we add the door and some embellishments on the house, and this will be used for some of the smaller ones. And then also the candy canes, we'll use some of the print from that to be able to use the stamps. So I'm going to show you a couple of things that we're going to do right now, and I'm going to do a test first before we use our paper. Now I have a Ranger craft mat on top of my craft mat, so that if I'm inking or I'm using glue, it just wipes up off of this, and I don't have any issues with it getting on my actual desk mat. Okay, so that's what this is underneath here. All right. So, white ink, guys, white ink. So here is, let me get my sample out. So I'm going to show you the difference. So there's a lot of different white inks out on the market. Some people have favorites. Other people are still searching for the right ink. I'm going to show you, this is one I picked up at Michael's. It's a white ink. Now, white ink is generally pigment ink, because that needs to, the ink kind of stands on top of the paper and doesn't absorb into the paper until we dry it. So a pigment ink is going to give you, for the white, is going to give you your best bet for it to look like a true white on your cardstock, particularly on your darker cardstock. So let me move this out of the way here. So, but pigment ink stays wet for quite a while. And what's going to happen is if you use a pigment ink to make your white show up on these boxes, you're going to probably end up putting your hand on it, and you're going to smear it, and then you're going to be really unhappy. So I'm going to show you a couple of tips for that. And that is, we're going to use a white pigment ink, but we're also going to use the Ranger Heat It tool, a craft tool, so any type of craft heat tool, and we're going to dry the ink before we move on to the next layer so that we're not smearing this onto our project. So that's a tip for you guys. Now we're going to talk about the inks. Now I have used all kinds of white inks over the years, and I will tell you that they're not all created equal. Even though they're white pigment inks, you would think they would be, but they're not. And I'm going to show you a demonstration. So we're going to use this one that I bought at Michael's. It's Stampabilities. It's a white pigment ink. Get the lid off of here. And I have already lined up my scallop that's for the roof line onto my acrylic block. Now, sometimes your stamps have a type of oil from the machine when they manufacture the stamps, and the thing that I've found to clean this the best is you can stamp, sometimes I'll just take a paper towel and rub it like this to try to get some of that oil off. That does not always work, and so I have found these high polymer rub erasers that you rub across this, and it's like magic, guys. It gives you a great clear stamped image, and I just rub it across, and then we're ready to go. So I highly recommend you have these in your stash if you're stamping. Now this is the Stampabilities white ink, and we're just going to do this. I'm going to do this to get ink on to, you can see I've got white ink on there now, and I have a piece of scrap cardstock here, the craft cardstock. I'm going to lay that on there and just press to make sure it's there, and then I'm going to lift it up. Okay, now you can hardly see that, right? It's not very showy. Now it will sit on top of the paper, and if I rub my finger across it, it's going to smear. I've got ink on my fingers now. That's why you have to be careful when you're using the pigment ink. However, let me get this out so I can clean it off. This is the Diamond Press stamp chamois, and I've already got one wet in my bag. And then I'm just going to use this to wipe the ink off. Okay, so we're doing a comparison so I can show you that not all white ink is created equal. So we're going to close this up. And now we're going to use my favorite white ink, which is the Hero Arts Unicorn Pigment Ink. And it is going to be like night and day, guys, night and day. Just going to go in, make sure I get ink on my stamp, and move this, and I'm going to lay this on here. And look at that. Look how much better that is. You can actually see the scallop now, right? The other one has completely faded into the paper, and you can't even see it anymore. The Unicorn Hero Arts White Pigment Ink is the best one I have ever found. However, if you're going to notice, can you see that? It stays wet, so it looks wet on here. So the best thing to do as we're going to work on our roof, we want to dry this one before we apply the next one, because of course these are staggered to create like the tiles on a roof. So that's when your heat tool comes in, and let me put my lid on my ink. And then you're just going to dry it. It'll only take a second or two, but you want to dry this so that it doesn't get smeared. And you'll see it just takes a second. And now it's dry, and it's not going to smear when I rub my finger across it. Okay, so that was my ink tip for working with white ink on these gingerbread houses. And now we're going to get our house out. I'm going to put this one out of the way, and I'm going to get the houses out, and I'm going to go ahead and add my roof line for each of my house pieces. Okay, so the roof is this piece here, and this one. So we're going to stamp those first, and I'm going to start at the top. And this is why you want to make sure that you have something underneath and on top of your, underneath your paper and on top of your craft mat, because this is longer than the roof is. And so we want to, here is the edge. I'm going to fold that over just to make it easier to see it. And then you're going to line your scallops up. Onto your paper. I'm going to use that squeegee, the chamois, and we're going to go ahead and use the heat tool again to make sure it's dry before we go to put the next one on. It only takes a second to get it dry, and then we can do our next. Okay, lay it on there. All right, so you're just going to repeat this process for both sides of the roof line. Get that. Okay, so we're just going to keep repeating that until we have it on here and each is dry and it looks good. Okay, I've got one of the roof lines stamped, and then I'm going to do the other one, and I wanted to show you how did I do this one without it messing up. I folded it in like this, and then when I go to put my roof line so that it looks even, I folded it and I've left this edge open onto my mat. So when I go to add my ink, I'm going to line it up like this so that my lines will be even on both sides of the roof, and then I'll do that through the rest. But this way I'm not getting extra ink on this other edge. Okay, so that's how I did that. I knew you guys would probably want to know, how are you doing this, Debbie? Okay, now if you want to make the hatch marks that are up here on the two peaks of the roofs, you will need to have a larger block, and we're going to use this stamp, this one right here. Okay, and we'll still have our white ink, our white pigment ink, and we're going to put this on our block. Okay, and if you haven't used this, remember, clean it off, because it could have oils on it from the machine pressing, and I want to make sure I get all of that off of here. Okay, so we're going to use our ink, and we're going to put I'm going to fold this under just so it doesn't get on it, okay, the piece next to it, and fold the tabs back on it as well. And we're going to be lining this up here with the roof like that, okay? So we're going to add our ink. And I'm not pushing hard on this. I'm just tapping it across to make sure I get ink on it. And you can see I've got the white ink on it. And now I'm going to lay it on the roof line. Let me pull this down where I can see it better. Okay, and we're just going to line that up like so. It's got lines on it, so we want to make sure that we get all of that pressed. Now, if these were individual pieces, I would be able to use my stamping press, and we're going to have a little situation right there on mine, and I will show you how we're going to fix that, because I know it's going to happen to you too. But here is that stamp, and we do want to hit it with the dryer real quick just to make sure it doesn't get smeared. All right, now we're going to do the other piece of the house. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to fold this over so I just have this part, and I folded this down. Okay, so that when we go to add the ink, get more ink on it. All right, make sure I press it in the middle for this one, since I didn't press hard enough on the other one. Make sure that that gets on there really nicely. Working with the bigger blocks sometimes can be a challenge. Okay, we're going to lift it up. Okay, that one looks much better. Heat again, just to make sure it dries. Have the white on the roof. But we had a little bit of an error here, right? How are we going to fix that? Well, here comes our handy dandy white pen. This is by a company called Y-Bar, and it is a white gel pen, and these actually fit in the Cricut machines. I know a lot of y'all have the Cricut die cut machines. This fits in the accessory holder. So if you're making something and you need a white pen, this one fits. It comes in a pack of 7. I got it on Amazon. I have tried every white pen known to man. I am not kidding. And this one works so well. Let me just show you. I mean, it works great. So we're going to use this to fill in the lines there where we had a little mishap with our stamping. But I just want it to be as consistent as possible. So if you ended up with a little skip on any of your other inking, use the white gel pen to fill it in so that you have that look. And it's not a pain for you. Okay, so we've got this part done, and then we want to go ahead and add our other embellishments. Now, you may have figured out what you want your house to look like, and that is awesome. So there's so much variety of things that you could cut out to put onto your house, or there's a lot more stamped images that you can use. So let me set this back up here, because I want to stamp my door onto my front door over here. So I'm going to take some brown ink, and I'm just using a Ranger Distress Oxide ink that's a vintage photo. You can use whatever ink you want. And then I want to find my door on my stamp, which is here. And I'm going to add that onto my stamp base, my acrylic block. And I'm just going to wipe this off to make sure I get a good clean stamp. I don't do that every time, but since these are so new, I wanted to make sure that I get that on there. The roof also, in these instructions, have an extra little embellishment that they stamp between each of those tiles. If you guys want to do that, knock yourself out. I opted not to do that. Making sure I get plenty of ink on that, and then I'm going to line it up here in the center of that front piece. That's going to be the front of my house. Make sure the ink gets on there really well. Looks good. And then I can come back in with that little doorknob, depending upon what color you want to use. I'm just going to use brown. It's little teeny tiny. And I'm just going to add that for the doorknob. Okay. We're also going to determine what else we want to put on our house. So I've got the doorknob on here. I also want to go ahead and add the windows. So whatever windows you pick, there's a whole selection of windows. I opted to go with the round windows on the sides of the house, and on the back of the house I'm using a square one just to be different. Okay. Now, I did tell you that as we go through this, I was going to give you guys some other tips. And I tried using my stamp press and trying to use, there is a stamped gumdrop. There's a stamp for the gumdrop. You could stamp it directly onto your paper if you want to do that. Or you can die cut. There's a die cut for the gumdrop. Okay, it looks like this. And I opted to do the colored pieces of cardstock to make my gumdrops. However, if you didn't want to, maybe you didn't have all the colors you wanted to use or whatever, you can do something else. Because I tried to stamp this, stamp the gumdrop stamp onto a piece of paper and then use the die that cuts this out, but it was really hard to get it to line up correctly just because it's so small. It was frustrating. So to take the frustration out, I cut it out of the colored cardstock. But if you don't have colored cardstock, you can cut it out, and we're going to do it a couple of different ways. You can use an ink dauber. Let me set this out of the way. You can use an ink dauber and some ink. And lay this down and just stamp it with the dauber and the ink. So if you wanted to color it that way, you could. The other way you could do it is, let me use this, is you can take this and you can use like an alcohol marker or just a marker, and you could just color the shapes if you prefer to do that. So I wanted to give you guys options of different ways to color the pieces that you could add to your gingerbread house. Go a little crazy, make it whatever you want it to be. And I'm just going to move that around and get the other end of this. But so you could just color it with a, let me do this, with the alcohol marker, or you can color it with ink if you wanted to just use white paper for everything and then just color it in. It depends upon how detailed you want to be or how many of these you're going to make, the choice that you would have. But I wanted to give you those options, guys. The inks out. Let's go ahead and ink our candy canes and our peppermints, because we're going to use white and white cardstock, and we're going to use red ink. So let's go ahead and just knock these out real quick while we've got the ink out. Now you can make yours whatever color you want. I chose red, and I'm just using the Ranger Candy Apple color, and we need to get the stamps out. And on your stamp sheet, I'm going to put this back here so I don't lose it, my door. And then you want the peppermint, the bigger peppermint, and you want the candy cane shape. Now there's two candy canes because you have two different directions of the candy canes. So you want to make sure you're going to be stamping on the appropriate candy cane, so to speak. And let's see, I need this. So when you put your stamp on your block, figure out which candy cane shape is going to match the direction. So this, you put your stamp on your block, the flat side goes on your block, and then the raised side is the part we're going to put the ink on. So make sure you have your white candy cane turned appropriately. I'm going to make sure I get plenty of ink on this. And then we're just going to line it up and add the stripes to our candy cane. There we go. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other side for the candy cane, except that we need to use the other stamp so that it is the correct direction. So let's go ahead and add our windows. So I like to use my liquid glue for this and my tweezers, also my craft tweezers, so that I am able to line things up and hold it while I'm adding the glue. Another tip is if you use the, the fine tip on your glue, make sure when you pull the pin out, these are special pins. You don't use just a regular pin. These are stainless steel so they don't rust. And I just put a piece of washi tape along the side of my bottle, and I put my pin here so that I don't lose it. I'm going to start with the window. I flip it over, I add, we're just going to repeat this, guys. I'm going to show you one, and then we're going to go through, you can go through and add your others. Just a little bit of glue goes a long way to hold this on. It doesn't need to be a big glob, and the fine tip helps you get it onto it. So I know I want my window about here. There's two windows. And I'm going to put a Christmas tree between my two windows. So when I go to line this up, I'm going to put this window over here. So I'm laying my Christmas tree down here just to give me an idea of where I need to put the other one. Okay, and we're going to have our shutters. So I guess let's go ahead and add the shutters. So I cut out 2 shutter pieces for each window. And having them lined up in the tray like this makes it much easier to be able to put it together. Just lining those up along the sides of the window. Okay, and then my tree's going to go like right here, so I know I want to start my other window a little bit further over. We're doing this one section, and then I will let you guys work on getting the rest of the windows on. I'm not going to bore you with that. And there is a little red sash piece that you make to go underneath your window. And I'm putting my windows on first, and then I'll go in and add that piece. And like I said, there's different window shapes, so you do you. You pick what you would like for yours. It's nice to be able to have so many options and be able to customize this, because then everyone's looks different. Okay, and then the 2 little sash pieces that go under the windows, well, there's one for each window. You cut one when you cut out the shutters. So those go underneath. Let me move this up so you can see it. They go underneath your window like this. Okay, and we're going to do this one. Okay, so those are those windows, and then this tree is going to go here, right? And a couple of different things you can do. I would like a brown stem on my tree. Instead of having to cut out 2 shapes to create that, I am going to use my brown ink that I used for the door. I'm going to use that to just brush where the trunk is for this tree. And I'm also going to use the white gel pen to make it look like the tree has been dusted with some snow as well, not just the house, but the tree too. And just kind of, okay. So I just added a little bit of snow onto my tree. And then I'm going to glue this on. And I'm going to repeat this process for the other section, which will be the other side of the house when we put the box together. Okay, so there's that. And then I'm going to do the same thing in this section. And then for the back of the house, I chose to do a different shape window. So I used a square instead of that rounded arch window. Okay, a couple of more things to do to finish up. So you decorated your house however you want. You can see a little bit about what I did here. I made the gumdrops, and then I used the white gel pen to just kind of trace freehand around the outside of the little shape, just to give it a little more oomph. Okay, and then on the shutters, I added a little bit of the white gel pen where the marks are on the shutters, just so it looks like maybe some snow fell there. And then I added a little bit above the sash as well. So, you know, that's just adding a little more detail. But I also wanted to add a red bow to the front door and to the back window. I added a reef. That is one of the die cuts, is a little reef die cut. Now, some of these die cuts, particularly using the glitter paper, but sometimes your die cut doesn't want to pop out of your die shape. So there's little holes in the back of your die, and what I like to use is a weeding pin that I have in my stash, and you just poke those little holes and it pops right out. And then also, if there's any little indentations like on the bow, to get the little centers of the bow ribbon out, it's good for doing that as well. There's another tool that I have in my stash. This one I'm using die cuts. This is Spellbinder's Tool-in-One, and you can roll over the die and these little bristles kind of fill in. I use this mainly when I'm using bigger dies that I need to roll across. For smaller dies like the little cute bow that's in the die set, I use this tool. So I'm just going to add this. There we go. The bows are too big to put on the reef, but they look cute underneath the embellishment that I added there. All right, so we need to add the glitter. I made mine out of glitter. Yours may just be white, but these are the frost lines, basically, that go on the two pointed roof parts. And you're going to notice, if you look at them, the bottom edge is a little flat, and then this is the scallop frosty icicle part that hangs down. So you want to take your two pieces and make sure you have them in the right orientation, so your icicles are going to be pointing in. Okay, so we're going to add that on here. And there is a little indentation from the die cut that kind of helps you line it up. And we're just going to do that and start at the roof line and kind of put it on like this. It kind of goes a little bit over the edge of the tab. And then you'll add the other piece. So you'll do a left side and a right side, basically. And up at the top, I'm just kind of matching where the two pieces would fit together. We'll hold that on. Okay, so now that you have your house embellished, let's put it together. And I'm going to show you a couple of different things that I did. You have a roof line, okay? This is the roof line. If you want your box closed up, you're just going to fold it along. It already has a crease in it. You're just going to fold it along that crease, and we're going to leave it like this, okay? If you want your box to open up, like I told you earlier, I made this so that my box will open up this way, and I can put treats in it or little surprises or whatever. So I am closing my box up a little bit differently than this one is a closed system. Okay, so we're going to put this together in this box, and I'm going to show y'all here in a minute, but I wanted to explain to you before you start gluing stuff. If you want it open, we're going to do something different. If you want it the way designed it, then we'll just close up all those tabs and our box will be completely closed. So it'll be more like a display as opposed to it being a treat box. Okay, and then so we would do it like this and get that closed, and then you would add this solid piece across the top that would close the roof. Okay, now the way I did this one was I left one of the side flaps is open so that, and I added a handle. Okay, so if you want to add a handle, let me show you how I did that. And then we're going to put the box together. Okay, I took a pencil and I drew a handle shape. This is a piece of the craft cardstock that I made the box out of, and I folded a piece in half. It's about, let's see. It's about 2.5 inches, okay? And then I drew a handle shape. Can you guys see that? Just with a pencil. It doesn't have to be perfect, but I need them to both sides to match. So that's why I've already folded it in half, and now I'm going to take my handy dandy scissors and I'm going to cut it. So I'm going to cut one, but you're going to need two handles, but we don't want to cut this one apart because I want it double strength so that you can actually use it. So this is just a freehand thing. It's not perfect. It's not meant to be perfect. That's part of it being homemade, right? Okay, so I've got the shape, and then I'm going to glue this one face together. I'm just going to add some glue here to strengthen it, basically. Okay, so that's one handle. Can you guys see that? And then I'm going to take that shape I already cut out because I need a matching one, correct? For the other side. So let me make sure I got my pencil out here. So I'm just drawing it. So I put it on the remaining piece that's folded, and I'm just drawing the shape. Okay, take my scissors, I'm going to cut it. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're just doing a little fussy cutting here. Okay, then I'm going to glue the sides together so it helps strengthen it. Okay, so now I have two handles. What am I going to do with these? I'm going to attach them to my roof line. So we're going to set these aside to let them dry for just a second. Now you have the base. We already cut and folded this, okay, along the creases. And I want you to take one of the long end of tabs, and we're going to add some adhesive there. So I'm just going to use glue on this one, and I'm just going to add glue. Okay, so I added glue along that tab line. And you're going to take the front of your house, and you want to line the bottom up. This is the front piece of your house. You're going to line that up to the bottom of where that fold line is on that tab. Okay, so we're just going to give it a second, let the glue grab it. I'll even flip it over and just kind of press down to make sure that it's flat. Okay. Now we're going to fold the box together, and we're going to glue the inside. These flaps that are sticking up on that bottom are going to be glued on the inside of your house. All right, so we're going to add glue to the remaining 3 tabs. And you got to work a little bit quick when you're using the glue so it doesn't dry on you. Okay, so I've got the glue on the 3 remaining tabs, and we're going to add it to the rest of our box. So I'm making sure that it's lined up on the bottom. Okay, you can see this, and the sides are lined up. So doing that, then you're going to fold the back end over and glue it to the bottom of the box. And sometimes it helps to do that from the inside, pressing on the inside, making sure this is level and even with the bottom of the box. Now, when you get to this part, you have a tab over here. We're going to attach that tab to the side of the back of the house. I'm sorry, the front of the house. So we're going to put that tab down. We're going to line that bottom up because we're still gluing that last side to the bottom, and then we're going to be gluing the front of the house to the side, that side tab. Okay? And if you're using the liquid glue, it's going to take a second for this to sit and grab, and I like to flip it over and use my finger, and on those tabs on the inside, it's hard for you guys to see that, I'm using my finger on the tabs on the inside to make sure that that is secured. Now that we've got our box put together, this part of it, the shape of it, you've got your tabs that are up here with your roof, with the front, with those triangle pieces there, right? The side of the roof. So we're going to fold those tabs in. So we folded the tabs in. Now, if you want to add the handles that we made and make this so you can open your box, you are going to not glue one side of your box. Okay, so I'm going to flip this down, one of my house pieces. I'm flipping this one down, and I'm going to glue the inside of that tab to that piece. Okay. Now, if you wanted to close up your box, you would glue those 2 tabs together so your box is closed. Okay, and you would do the same thing with the sides. But I'm showing you how to adapt it so that you can have a box that opens. So I need to add a little more glue here. Okay, so this side is glued down. All right, this side I'm going to do the same thing. Now this is if you're going to add the handles that we made. Okay, so we're going to glue one side of this. We are going to use the tabs, and we're going to glue them onto this side. of the on one side of the box. It doesn't matter which side is going to be your opening side. That's it. But on one side, we are going to glue that tab to the side of the box. So we're going to add our glue on that tab. And then we're going to close that one side up against the tab. And it'll take a second for that glue to dry. And you're going to do that on both ends. One side glued. When you're looking at it, I glued this side. The left side is glued to those tabs. This side I left open. And I'm going to glue these tabs inside the box. Okay, because we're going to leave this flap open so we can get stuff into our box. Got that side done, and now we have the box that will close. We're going to take our handles that we made, and we're going to glue it to one side of the box. And I'll show you guys. I'm just going to add glue along the bottom here. Okay, and I'm going to glue that into, you know, kind of eyeballing it in the middle of that back piece that is glued. Okay, this is not the opening side. This is the glued side. Okay, and then we're going to add glue to the bottom of this tab. And when we do this, we're going to line it up so that it matches the other handle. Okay, so here's a piece. I put the glue on it. I'm going to match it up, and then I'm going to fold this one in, and I'm going to attach it so that then when you have your box closed, your handles match up. Now you have that piece of glitter or the roof line, and I just cut that along the folded line on it, and then I glued it to each side of the roof. So I'll show you what I mean. Let me just get my glue. Okay, so once I got my handle on, then I was able to just glue this on after I cut it in half, so it finishes up the roof line. And I did the same thing on the other side. Okay, now that we've got our roof on, you'll be able to close your box up. You can take some ribbon and tie your box up, add a tag to it or whatever, and you have this super duper little container. So we've got our house made. We turned it into a little gift box. And we are good to go for the holidays. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure and subscribe if you're not already subscribing. I'll have other tutorials available soon. I hope you enjoyed the special tips that I gave you today that will help you with any of your crafting, and that you got a lot out of me showing you which ink to get so that it actually shows up to use on your gingerbread houses. Until next time. Happy crafting!